Welcome to this Microsoft 365 and Teams update covering December into early January 2021. This is the first of two parts, so in a few days you'll see the January video coming out as well. But let's start by having a look at what we're going to cover. So we're going to kick off with a few points on SharePoint, and then we're going to spend most of our time looking at Teams. We're going to then focus on meeting recording locations, forms polls in Teams meetings, and then virtual breakout rooms, and then we'll show you where you can keep in touch. So starting off, Microsoft search results previews in SharePoint Online and Office.com are getting an improvement. So those of you who are watching on the video rather than the podcast, you can see that at the top we have got the old version there where it's very fixed, whereas the new version, there's the second image on the screen, has a little bit more detail, and depending on the detail that's available and the image is available, the preview will scale to give you a little bit more information. Next up, we've got the ability to delete or restore automatically a PowerApps custom form when its associated list has been deleted or restored. So that just means that things are a little bit tidier and you don't have these artifacts getting orphaned. So it's just helping you keep things a little bit tidier in SharePoint. New header configurations for modern sites and changes to the default. So you can see on the screen up here that we've got the compact header in SharePoint as the default, but you can choose the minimum, the standard, or the extended. So you can just increase that header or reduce it according to how you want your page to look. Okay, now moving on to Teams. So let's just briefly cover these points. Meeting links will no longer provide access to meetings content after the meeting ends. So what we're talking about here is these are people who were not originally invited to your meeting. So maybe you just forwarded a link or shared a link with somebody to come into your meeting. Once the meeting ends, then they don't still have access to all the assets for the meeting. But the people who were originally invited, of course they do. So this is a little bit delayed. This is Windows 10 and macOS native notifications. So those of you who don't like your operating system and Teams giving you notifications, it's going to bring them all together. So in Teams, you can say, I want all my Teams notifications delivered by my operating system. So we're looking at more like February for that now. Now here's a nice improvement to the SharePoint tab in Teams. So those of you who have used it before, you know that when you add a tab to a channel, when you use the SharePoint option, it's a little bit restrictive, and we've got around that in the past by adding a website tab and adding a link to whatever we wanted to see. Those of you who are watching the video rather than the podcast, you can see there's a lot more options. So you can add the recommended, the pages, lists, document libraries. So you've got quite a few more choices now for the SharePoint tab, and you can have multiple tabs. Quick recap on the limits. So meeting notes limit from 20 to 100. Active meeting attendees 300 to 1,000, up to 20,000 depending upon the license that you've got. This, I think, is a great alternative to live events. So you can have 1,000 active members and then 19,000 passive members of your meeting and seeing what you're doing. So from an overhead point of view, much easier than live events. Org-wide teams, this should have been out by now. This increased from 5,000 to 10,000. It's going to be a little bit later, so we're looking at the end of February. Should have been out by now, but that increase is going to come next month. An increase in team membership from 10,000 to 25,000 for a regular team. Okay, next up we have got the touch bar meetings controls for Mac. Now I had to ask a colleague about this. As an Apple denier, this wasn't really on my radar, but apparently you got this little touch bar thing on some Macs, and a colleague of mine, he said it's not so great, but some people love it. But now you can get some nice controls for Teams that hopefully will be of use to some of you. Microsoft are extending the temporary limits increase for live events. So this gives event support for up to 20,000 attendees and 50 events hosted simultaneously across the tenants, and event duration of 16 hours per broadcast. So that's just been extended, those increases temporarily for another 6 months or so. Thinking back to what I said a few minutes ago with the Teams meetings increased to 20,000, you can see there's a little bit of overlap there. So it's worth you considering both of those. Now this, I think, is going to help make meetings a little bit nicer. When you've got a large meeting, so over 40 attendees for a meeting, you're going to get automatically prompted to set options. So we're talking about, whether people can bypass the lobby, announcing callers when they join or leave. I recommend turning that off. That's annoying. Allowing attendees to unmute, who can present, all these sort of settings. So if you've got a large meeting, more than 40 people, it's going to automatically prompt you to do that. I reckon those big meetings will be a little bit tidier because it's not relying on people to remember that anymore. There's an update around the permissions for Teams meetings recordings. So anyone who only actually has view permissions will no longer be allowed to download it, which kind of makes sense, right? We've got the ability to add a shared calendar to a Teams channel. So this is really nice. So of course you've been able for a long time to add meetings to a channel, but they've been a little bit difficult to find. Now, if you go into your channel, click on the little plus sign next to the tabs, do a search for channel calendar. This will now show you all of the meetings for that channel. And if you try to create a meeting from that view, you'll see that automatically that channel is selected and you can't deselect it. So that's just a slightly nicer experience for those channel calendars. And don't forget, when you're creating a channel meeting, you can also add individuals who you really want to come to that meeting as well. Approvals and Teams, this has gone live, and superficially this looks really nice. Okay, and for those of you who are interested, look in the notes of this video or the podcast, and I'll make sure I'll put a link to this. So approvals look really nice, and I've tested them and they work really well. But an organisation that I work with the Inform team, have already disabled these, and they don't really think that from a securing and recording the approval, so making a record of the approval, doesn't meet their needs. Also, they don't like the fact that when you add a document to be approved, it adds it to the uploader's OneDrive, and then once it's been approved, you can then go and change it. Okay, so it's really nice for light touch approvals, but if you need to have that really locked down, then just have a close look and just see whether that's really meeting your needs or not. Okay, some niceties coming to Teams meetings. So as of today, the 25th, then in my tenant, we don't have this, but it's just some nice touch, bringing a bit of humanity to your meetings. So these look really nice. You can see on the top of the screen now on the right side, when you just have a regular meeting, you can see people's responses. The lower half of the screen, or the low quarter on the screen over there, that's showing you just a flow of what people are saying. So if people are really liking it, you'll see that kind of wave of the reactions as that's coming in. Support for multiple numbers for a user when dialing from chat. So if people have got multiple numbers there, you can see that you have those choices and you can pick a different number if you want to. So next one is an enhanced calling experience due any time now. So 25th of January, we don't have this. But if you look at your Teams, go to the calling app, that view you have, it's starting to look a little bit tired now. I first started training Teams about almost exactly 3 years ago. So what is it now, 25th of Jan? So almost exactly 3 years ago. And I don't think it's changed, if I'm honest. But this looks a lot nicer. It's a nicer experience. You can see all your recent calls in one place. It's easy to look at the mist. You can look at your voicemail, your speed dial. It's quicker to call people back. So look out for that. It's just a slightly nicer calling experience. Presenter view in Teams. This is getting an update. So this is where you have you're in a meeting and you want to present and you choose a PowerPoint presentation. Where we are at the moment is that, as of today, if you do that as the presenter, you just see the same thing that everybody else sees. You see like the full screen view. But what you see on the screen now, for those of you watching the video, you can see there highlighted with that little reddish kind of pink band around it. That's what everyone else sees. Okay, but what you see is a nice easy navigation to go forward and back. You see the notes for the slide as well, and across the bottom you see a film strip of the slides that you've got, and it makes it really easy for you to navigate forward and back. I'll be honest, personally, I like to have at least 2 screens on the go, and I just share a whole screen and I present into that screen. It makes it easier for me to pull things over. But if you're just doing a presentation, then this is a really nice option for you. Okay, so just a reminder. So for those of you whose business this is, guest access for Microsoft Teams will be turned on by default from the 8th of February 2021. So if you have not expressed the preference, then that means that this will be on by default. So if that means anything to you, quick Google search and you'll find that story quite easily. The profile menu is getting an update. On the left hand side here you can see the old version, then over on the right hand side you can see it's been cleaned up a little bit, and you'll see at the top there's going to be a new button for you to access a couple of those functions that have been dropped from the original profile menu. Now the option to create all meetings online is coming to Outlook for Windows. So this just means that if you're using the desktop app and you've got a desktop version of Outlook, and Microsoft Teams is the default solution in your organization, you'll get this button here, and it just means that every single meeting that you create inside Outlook will automatically have Teams meetings details added to it. Okay, I think that's a real sign of times, isn't it? That's good. That if you want it to be, that can be the default for your meetings. And while I'm on this screen, I know it's not really what I'm here to talk about, but if you look at this tick box or this checkbox here, end appointments and meetings early. So you can end your meetings and appointments 5 minutes early, 10 minutes early, whatever works for you. It's worth you turning that on. It just buys you 5 minutes back every time you have a meeting. Okay, so let us have a focused look at meeting recording locations. So what this is the change from where meetings are recorded. So up until now, when you record a meeting, it gets saved to Stream, and a link gets sent out for that. And if you look at your stream in meetings, you can see it in there. Anyone who's had to regularly do that and share it will know that it's just a clunky, it's not a great experience. That's been changed now. So non-channel meetings, so this is just a regular meeting. I'm not really sure how better to say this. So Microsoft describe it as non-channel meetings. So this is just normal, the type of meetings that you set up or you have with your colleagues or your team. That will go to, those recordings will go to the OneDrive of the person who clicked record. Okay, and if you have a channel meeting, it will go to that channel's file area. So once you kick off a recording of either of those, a new folder will appear, and then you will you'll see those recordings in there. Now the benefits here, just think about all the functionality that surrounds any of the files that you've got in your organization's OneDrives or your SharePoint areas. Think about the controls and all the benefits and the features around those files. You're now going to have that for your recordings. Okay, so it's just a much nicer experience. Everything you can do with a file, you can now do with these recordings. Let's look at permissions. So for non-channel meetings, these are just the regular normal meetings that we have. All meeting invitees, except for external users, will automatically receive a sharing link. For channel meetings, permissions that are inherited from the membership of the team. So the owners and the members, whatever permissions they've got in that channel, they will have that for these recordings. Now, depending on where your organization is with this, it will depend on where you are with it for what your experience that you get when you go to Teams and press record. But it's worth knowing that from March 2021, this is going to be the default experience. So if your organization haven't notified you about this yet, and you're responsible, for example, for the training materials, be aware this is coming because you don't have a choice. So if you're responsible for training, or you're a super user for your team, then make sure that you're aware that this is coming down the line. Okay, let's have a quick look at form polls in Teams meetings. So this is just, you see, it's another example of how the different apps in 365 are coming together. So presenters can add the Forms app as a meeting tab inside Teams. You can create these and use them before, during or after your meetings. So maybe you want to poll people before they come to a meeting, and then at the end of it, maybe it's a training session or you're getting people's opinions, then you can run that same or similar poll again afterwards. You have 3 ways to evaluate the results. So you can do it inside Forms, you can export it, or you can look at it inside the tab inside Teams. Now let's have a look at this. So we're going to start off by joining our meeting, and you can see at the top up here, we are going to click the little plus sign. We're going to add a new tab, and we're going to search for Forms. Okay, that gets added then. And now we can create our first poll. So we've got our question, we've got our answers, we set our options, and then we click on Save. Okay, good. Now you can see that this is in its draft state at the moment, and at any point you can go into there and you can launch this poll if you want to. And this is what people will see. They'll see the option up here, they can submit their vote, and they'll see the results if that's how you've got it set up. Now when you go back into the tab after that, you can see that your poll is live, and you can see the results, and then you have some options about whether you close it, you want to export the results, or you want to delete the poll. So it's just a really nice way of engaging people in your meetings. Now let's have a look at virtual breakout rooms. So these have been around for a little while now, but they're definitely still worth a mention. A couple of things to think about there is that at the moment, only the organizer can create this. I expect that to change to nominating people, or maybe presenters will be able to control these, but at the moment it's the organizer of the meeting only, which already has been a little bit sticky with a couple of meetings that I've been on. But you know what? It's better that we have the functionality than not at all. Okay, so we've pressed the button, so we're getting kicked off, and we're going to say how many rooms we want. We can have up to 50 of them. We're going to decide how people are assigned automatically, or do you want to put people into rooms? Now I've seen this happen both ways. So a lot of meetings, maybe it doesn't matter if you get people scattered off in different rooms, but I have seen the rooms getting named, and certain people, for example, the presenter in that breakout room, they've got to be in the right room, right? So people can be manually added, but you know what? It just takes seconds to quickly put many people into rooms. So we've got this set up, and we're going to say yes, we want to create our room. Okay, good. And you can see here that we've got the ability to rename them if we want to, but we are just going to note that they're in a closed state. But as soon as we want to, we can press Start Rooms, and depending on the settings, you can see up there there's a little ellipsis, top right hand side. So that's got a few settings in there. But when we're ready, we're going to say we'd like to start our rooms, and because of the settings that we've got, people will get a notification and they will automatically be moved to that room. Now I've seen that a couple of times, and it's a bit of a delay, and people seem to go at slightly different times. I guess it just depends on the performance of the tenant that you're in and the amount of people, and there'll be a pause and people will say nothing's happened. So just warn people that it might take a few seconds and it might go at different times. Okay, so one of the things that you can do as the organizer, you can send an announcement to all the rooms, but then you can quite easily navigate around the rooms. So I haven't shown it on the screen there, but as the organizer, you can move around those rooms really easily. And when you're ready, you can click on Close Rooms, and then everybody will get called back into the main meeting. So the people who go to those other rooms, they are restricted by the content that they see. They can only see what was in their room, but as the presenter, you can see everything. Okay, so let's start wrapping up. If you want to keep in touch, you can do so on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. The LinkedIn option gives you a version of this that you can read with extra links. Maybe you like podcasts, you can look at the website. If you want to have a look at these slides in your own time, go to SlideShare. You get that through LinkedIn as well. So lots of options there. Look out for the next video. That'll be out in a few days, and that's going to cover January. Okay folks, that pretty much wraps it up. Look out for the next update in a few days. It's going to cover January, and I'll see you then.